First strike. Grand Admiral VYX-427 stood before the holographic display, their crystalline form refracting the light of 1,000 stars. The expansion fleet hung in perfect geometric formation above the blue-green world designated Earth. Another routine annexation, another species to be brought into the fold of the Meridian Empire's perfect order. Begin the standard approach sequence, VYX commanded, their voice resonating through the bridge's crystalline architecture. Initiate Protocol 7 Alpha. The massive ships moved in perfect synchronization, their formations calculated to inspire awe and submission in primitive species. It had worked flawlessly for over 10,000 years. The display of overwhelming force, the precisely choreographed dance of capital ships, it was designed to trigger surrender protocols in any rational species. Scanning planetary defenses, reported Analysis Officer Zin 891. Primitive orbital installations, minimal space fleet capacity. Designated Class 3 civilization, standard submission protocols should be sufficient. VYX's crystalline appendages shifted in satisfaction. They had done this countless times before. The database contained records of over 3,000 successful annexations, each following the same perfect pattern. Resistance was mathematically impossible once a species understood the futility of opposition. Broadcasting surrender protocols on all frequencies, Communications Officer RYX 655 announced. Converting to all known language patterns, translation matrix complete. The message was elegant in its simplicity: submit to the perfect order of the Meridian Empire, or face extinction. The choice was obvious. It was rational. It was inevitable. The response came exactly 2.7 minutes later, well within the standard deviation for a Class 3 civilization. But something was wrong. RYX 655's crystalline form clouded with confusion. Grand Admiral, they're laughing. Explain, VYX demanded, their perfect geometry showing the first signs of distortion. The human response, they're broadcasting what appears to be entertainment frequencies. They're treating our ultimatum as a joke. Before VYX could process this unprecedented response, the tactical display erupted in chaos. Hundreds of small ships were emerging from behind Earth's moon, from its orbital shadows, from seemingly impossible hiding places. They weren't fleeing. They weren't surrendering. They were attacking. Impossible. Zin 891 shouted as the first wave of human vessels weaved through their perfect formation. Their technology is inferior by at least 3 centuries. They cannot hope to. The officer's words cut off as a heavily damaged human vessel deliberately rammed one of their escort cruisers. The resulting explosion created a cascade failure that defied every known law of tactical physics. They're not following any known combat protocols, the tactical officer reported, their crystalline voice cracking with distress. They're making it up as they go along. VYX watched in fascination as the humans employed tactics that defied all strategic logic. Smaller ships deliberately drew fire to expose weaknesses in Meridian shields. Damaged vessels became improvised weapons instead of retreating for repairs. Each time the Meridian fleet adapted to counter a tactic, the humans would innovate something new. Send in the protocol enforcers, VYX ordered. Transmit the complete tactical handbook. They must understand the proper way to conduct warfare. The response came swiftly, but not as expected. Thanks for the manual, a human voice crackled through their communications. It's really helpful to know exactly what you expect us to do, so we can do the opposite. As their perfect formation crumbled into chaos, VYX realized they weren't witnessing a battle. They were witnessing the end of an era. The humans weren't just refusing to follow the protocols, they were actively exploiting the very existence of protocols as a weakness. Contact the High Council, VYX commanded, their voice heavy with realization. They must know, we've found something new. Something that doesn't just break the rules, but refuses to acknowledge them in the first place. The tactical display showed another human ship, impossibly small, somehow disabling one of their largest cruisers by exploiting a weakness that no protocol-following species would have ever considered. No, VYX corrected themselves, their crystalline form rippling with an emotion they had never experienced before. The Council needs to know we've found something far more dangerous than that. We found a species that turns our own rules into weapons against us. As VYX gave the order to retreat, they understood that the galaxy would never be the same. The age of protocols was over. The age of humanity had begun. The ripple effect. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Meridian High Council had never seen such disorder. The normally pristine crystalline chamber, designed to reflect the perfect symmetry of their civilization, now rippled with waves of agitation as representatives from 1,000 worlds struggled to process the unthinkable, defeat. Supreme Counselor LYX-001's surface facets flickered with distress as they replayed the battle footage for the fourth time. The perfect geometric formations of the Meridian Fleet, formations that had remained unchanged for millennia, shattered against the chaos of human tactics. This is unprecedented, declared Counselor Mix-219, their crystalline form clouding with confusion. In 15,000 years of expansion, no species has ever rejected the surrender protocols. It defies all rational behavior patterns. A holographic projection materialized in the center of the chamber, showing a human vessel performing what the analysts had termed an impossible maneuver. With its main engines destroyed, the ship had vented its atmosphere in precisely calculated bursts, using the escaping air as improvised thrusters to position itself for a final, devastating attack. Their technological inferiority should have made resistance impossible, noted military analyst KYX-773. Yet they've turned that very limitation into an advantage. They're using methods we never considered because they were too primitive. The assembly erupted in discordant frequencies as a new recording played. A human commander's voice filled the chamber. You know what your biggest weakness is? You fight like immortals. But we fight like we're already dead. Explain, demanded LYX-001, their perfect geometric form showing signs of stress fractures. Intelligence Officer Nix-556 stepped forward, their surface rippling with unease. Humans have a concept they call, nothing to lose. When faced with overwhelming odds, instead of surrendering as any rational species would, they become more aggressive, more creative, more dangerous. The holographic display shifted to show multiple battles simultaneously. Human ships deliberately flying into weapon-blind spots that no protocol-following species would consider. Damaged vessels combining their shield frequencies to create unexpected defensive patterns. Communications jammers repurposed as improvised weapons. Their learning, KYX-773 continued. Every tactic we use, every protocol we follow, becomes data they analyze and exploit. They're not just fighting us, they're evolving their strategies in real time. A new figure emerged from the shadows of the chamber, War Oracle TYX-000, their ancient crystalline form bearing the accumulated wisdom of countless conflicts. All movement in the chamber ceased as the Oracle spoke. We face not merely a military challenge, but an existential one. For eons, we have perfected our protocols, believing that the path to civilization lay in the elimination of chaos. The humans have shown us our error. In our quest for perfect order, we have become predictable. In our adherence to protocol, we have become brittle. The Oracle's words sent shockwaves through the assembly. LYX-001's surface began to crack under the strain of processing this heretical concept. Our latest intelligence reports are disturbing, Nix-556 added hesitantly. The humans are sharing their battle data freely among themselves. They're conducting what they call post-game analysis, treating our encounters as learning opportunities. Each defeat makes them stronger. Each protocol we reveal becomes a new weakness for them to exploit. The chamber descended into chaos as the implications became clear. The Meridian Empire had spent millennia perfecting its military protocols, creating an invincible force based on perfect predictability and overwhelming power. The humans had rendered that perfection meaningless in less than a day of combat. "There's more," KYX 773 said, their voice barely audible. "We've detected transmissions suggesting that humans find this situation entertaining. They're treating our invasion as what they call a welcome challenge. Some of them are actually enjoying this." Supreme Counselor LYX-001 raised all their appendages for silence. "We must adapt," they declared, though the very words caused visible distress among the assembly. "For the first time in our history, we face a species that thrives on chaos, that turns disadvantage into opportunity, that becomes stronger in the face of defeat." War Oracle TYX-000 moved to the center of the chamber, their ancient form casting fractured shadows across the assembly. "The age of protocol is ending," they announced. "We must learn to embrace chaos, or we will shatter against it. The humans are not merely our enemies, they are our evolution." As the assembly erupted in discord, a final transmission played through the chamber. A human captain's voice, calm despite their ship being heavily damaged, "Thanks for the dance lessons, but we prefer to freestyle." The ripples of change were spreading through the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same. Unconventional warfare. Fleet Commander RYX-892 had never seen anything like it. The tactical display before them showed what should have been impossible, a group of human ships deliberately flying into their own weapons debris field. "Track them," they ordered, their crystalline form vibrating with frustration. "They must be malfunctioning. No rational species would." The words died as the humans demonstrated exactly why they'd entered the debris field. The fragments of destroyed ships weren't just obstacles, they were improvised stealth devices, each piece of wreckage masking the human vessel's energy signatures. By the time the Meridian sensors penetrated the chaff, it was too late. "Multiple impacts detected," the sensor officer called out. They're using our own destroyed ships as cover for torpedo launches." The human fleet emerged from the debris field like ghosts, their smaller ships having used the chaos to slip past the Meridian's perfect defensive grid. It was beautiful, in a terrifying way, like watching a natural disaster unfold in perfect detail. New transmission from the human flagship, communications reported. Text only. It says, "Thanks for the cover. We're recycling enthusiasts." RYX-892 felt their crystalline structure crack slightly with stress. They had studied every major battle in Meridian history, memorized every protocol, mastered every formation. None of it had prepared them for this. On the other side of the battle, aboard the Earth Defense Force flagship Prometheus, Admiral Isabella Torres watched the Meridian fleet's reactions with professional interest. "They're still trying to maintain formation," she noted to her tactical officer, Commander Raj Patel. "Even when it's clearly disadvantageous." "Old habits die hard," Raj replied, fingers dancing across his console as he coordinated their next unconventional assault. "Especially when they're 10,000 years old. Look at their response times, they have to run everything through their protocol database before they can act." "Then let's give them something that's not in their database," Isabella smiled. Launch Operation Mosquito. Across the battlefield, dozens of small human craft began what appeared to be suicide runs against the largest Meridian vessels. The crystalline ships responded exactly as protocol dictated, shifting their shields to maximum power at the expected points of impact. But the human ships didn't impact. Instead, they pulled up at the last second, their near-miss trajectories creating gravitational distortions that interfered with the Meridian's crystal-based sensor systems. In the seconds of confusion that followed, hundreds of even smaller drones, virtually invisible to Meridian sensors, attached themselves to the capital ship's hulls. "What are they doing?" RYX-892 demanded as alarms began blaring across their fleet. "Those devices are barely powerful enough to breach our outer hull." "They're not trying to breach it," their engineering officer realized too late. "They're resonating with it. They're using our own crystalline structure to The officer never finished their sentence. The tiny drones, their energy outputs synchronized perfectly, began vibrating at exactly the right frequency to create sympathy patterns in the Meridian ship's crystal matrices. It wasn't enough to destroy them, but it disrupted their sensor crystals just long enough for the main human fleet to close to point-blank range. "Beautiful," Isabella murmured as the Meridian formation finally broke completely. "They're actually learning. Look at the outlier groups, they're starting to abandon protocol." She was right. Several Meridian commanders, faced with the failure of their standard tactics, had begun improvising. Their ships moved in unpredictable patterns, making them harder targets but also disrupting their fleet's legendary coordination. "Admiral," Raj called out, "we're picking up some unusual communications from the Meridian fleet. It looks like there's an internal argument going on. Some of their commanders want to adapt our tactics, but others are calling it heresy." Isabella leaned forward, studying the tactical display with renewed interest. "Now that's interesting. They're not just fighting us anymore, they're fighting their own nature." She opened a channel to all Earth forces. "All ships, focus fire on any Meridian vessel still following standard protocols. Let's give their innovators a chance to prove themselves." The battle that followed was unlike anything in human or Meridian history. While most of the crystalline fleet continued to follow their ancient protocols, a growing minority began experimenting with human-style tactics. The result was chaos, exactly what the humans had been counting on. "Send a message to their command ship," Isabella ordered. "Text only. Tell them, the first step to learning is admitting you don't have all the answers. The second step is trying something new. Welcome to step 2. Aboard their flagship, RYX-892 received the message and, for the first time in their long existence, did something no Meridian commander had done in 10,000 years, they laughed. "Send a response," they ordered, watching as more of their fleet began breaking from protocol to adopt improvised tactics. "Tell them, step 3 is knowing when to ask for a teacher. We are interested in learning more." As the battle transformed into something approaching a joint training exercise, with human ships demonstrating unconventional tactics to their more receptive Meridian counterparts, Isabella turned to her tactical officer. "Raj, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them Phase 1 is complete." "Phase 1, sir." "Yes," she smiled. Breaking their military protocols was just the beginning. Now we get to show them something really dangerous, human creativity. The stars seemed to twinkle in anticipation of what was to come. The galaxy's oldest civilization was about to get a crash course in thinking outside the box, and their teachers were the youngest species they'd ever encountered. The irony was not lost on anyone. The breaking point. The Sacred Hall of Protocols, heart of the Meridian Empire's capital world, had never witnessed such discord. Its perfect crystalline walls, designed to amplify harmony, instead resonated with the clash of opposing ideologies. Supreme Archon DYX-001 stood at the center of the chaos, their usually flawless geometric form showing visible stress fractures. Before them, the Council of Eternal Order had devolved into two distinct factions, the Traditionalists and the newly emerged Adapters. "This is absolute heresy," proclaimed First Guardian KYX-738, their crystalline form radiating rigid patterns of traditional authority. 10,000 years of perfect order, and you propose we abandon it for chaos? Admiral RYX-892, now leader of the Adapter faction, stepped forward. Their form showed the asymmetrical patterns that had become common among those who'd fought the humans directly. "I propose we survive," they responded simply. The humans have proven that perfect order equals perfect predictability. In their words, the only constant is change. The chamber's recording crystals projected scenes from recent battles. Traditional Meridian formations shattered against irregular human attacks. But alongside these defeats, new images showed hybrid tactics, Meridian ships moving with unprecedented unpredictability, combining their technological superiority with human-inspired improvisation. Look at these abominations, KYX 738 gestured at the displays. Our ships move like damaged crystals, without pattern or purpose. You call this evolution. I call it degradation. I call it survival, a new voice rang out. War Oracle TYX 000 emerged from their meditation chamber for the first time in a century. Their ancient form bore new patterns, irregular crystalline growths that seemed to shift and change as they moved. I have foreseen it. The age of rigid order is ending. We must adapt or shatter. The chamber erupted in competing frequencies as decades of growing tension finally reached their breaking point. The traditionalists, led by KYX 738, began reciting the ancient protocols of purity. The adapters responded with captured human battle footage, showing the devastating effectiveness of flexible tactics. "You're all missing the larger pattern," announced Science Director Nix 556, their form displaying the complex geometries of advanced theoretical physics. "The humans aren't just teaching us new ways to fight. They're teaching us new ways to think." The director activated a holographic display showing human scientific archives. Look at their history. Every major breakthrough they've made came from questioning established patterns. They call it thinking outside the box, a concept so foreign to us that we don't even have words for it in our language. And where has this chaos led them? KYX 738 demanded. Their society is a mess of competing ideologies, their science lacks proper protocol, their very evolution seems random. Their evolution is precisely the point, RYX 892 countered. They adapt faster than any species we've encountered because they embrace change. While we spent 10,000 years perfecting our protocols, they spent 10,000 years perfecting their ability to break patterns and try new things. The debate was interrupted by an urgent transmission from the frontier. The holographic display shifted to show a joint human meridian fleet engaging a previously unknown hostile force. The humans' irregular tactics combined perfectly with adapted meridian technology, creating a defense that was both powerful and unpredictable. "This is what we could become," RYX 892 said softly. "Not abandoned order, but dynamic order. Not rigid patterns, but evolving ones." War Oracle TYX 000 moved to the center of the chamber, their shifting form commanding attention. "I have experienced revelation," they announced. "The humans' greatest gift to us is not their tactics or their technology. It is their understanding that perfection is not a fixed point, but a continuous journey of growth and change." Supreme Archon DYX 001 finally spoke, their voice carrying the weight of ultimate authority. "We stand at a crossroads. For 10 millennia, we have been the galaxy's guardians of order. But perhaps true order is not the absence of chaos, but the ability to adapt to it. This is revolution." KYX 738 declared. "You would undo all we have built." "No," DYX 001 corrected. "We would build something new. Something stronger. The humans have shown us that true strength lies not in resisting change, but in mastering it." As if to emphasize the point, the holographic display showed more footage from the frontier battle. A Meridian ship, its crystalline structure somehow modified to flex and shift, performed a maneuver that would have shattered a traditional vessel. The result was devastatingly effective. "The choice before us is clear," the Supreme Archon continued. "We can cling to our rigid patterns and eventually shatter, or we can learn to bend, to adapt, to grow. The humans call it evolution. I call it survival." In the silence that followed, the gathered leaders watched as more battle footage streamed in. Each victory by the adapted ships sent fractures through the traditionalists' resolve. Each successful fusion of human tactics with Meridian technology weakened their arguments. The age of absolute order was ending. The age of dynamic evolution had begun. And in the space between order and chaos, a new kind of civilization was taking shape, one that combined the best of both worlds. "Send word to the human fleet," DYX-001 commanded. Tell them we're ready for our next lesson. Evolution's Edge. 1 year after the breaking point, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Meridian Empire bore little resemblance to its former self. The once rigid crystalline architecture now flowed in organic patterns, its surfaces shifting and adapting like living crystal. It was, Supreme Archon DYX-001 reflected, a perfect metaphor for their civilization's transformation. Today marked the first-ever joint council of civilizations, where humans and Meridians would formally establish a new galactic order. The human delegation, led by Admiral Isabella Torres and Earth's diplomatic chief Jason Park, stood in stark contrast to their crystalline hosts, their very presence a reminder of how much had changed. A year ago, we thought your species would either submit or be destroyed, DYX-001 addressed the assembled gathering. Instead, you taught us that there was a third option, evolution. The chamber's holographic systems activated, displaying scenes from the past year. Meridian ships incorporating human-inspired flexible tactics. Human vessels equipped with adapted crystalline technology. Joint research projects that combined Meridian precision with human creativity. We called it Operation Butterfly Effect, Admiral Torres explained to the assembly. Your empire was like a perfect crystal, beautiful, powerful, but brittle. We didn't need to break you. We just needed to introduce enough chaos to force adaptation. Science Director Nix 556 stepped forward, their once rigid form now displaying complex, shifting patterns. The results have exceeded all possible projections. By combining human ingenuity with Meridian technology, we've made more progress in 1 year than in the previous 1,000. The displays showed new hybrid vessels, their crystalline hulls capable of flowing like liquid metal, adapting to damage instead of shattering. Research stations where human scientists worked alongside Meridian scholars, each learning from the other's approach. Defense platforms that combined Meridian precision with human unpredictability. But the military applications are just the beginning, Jason Park added. Our cultures have begun a true symbiosis. Human art inspired by crystalline mathematics. Meridian architecture incorporating organic patterns. We're creating something entirely new. Former First Guardian KYX-738, now a prominent voice in the moderate faction, raised their reformed structure. We feared chaos would destroy us. Instead, it transformed us. The humans showed us that true order isn't static, it's dynamic, always evolving, always adapting. War Oracle TYX-000, their ancient form now a mesmerizing blend of geometric and organic patterns, moved to the center of the chamber. I have seen the future, they announced. Not with the rigid clarity of old, but with the shifting possibilities of what may be. We stand at the dawn of a new age. The displays shifted to show the frontier, where the combined human Meridian fleets had established a new kind of defense network. Instead of rigid formations, they created adaptive patterns that could respond to any threat with both precision and creativity. The galaxy is changing, Admiral Torres observed. Other species are watching, learning. Some fear us, but more want to join us. They see what can happen when you combine the wisdom of age with the adaptability of youth. Which brings us to today's purpose, DYX-001 declared. We propose a new form of galactic governance. Not the rigid hierarchies of the past, nor the complete freedom of chaos, but a dynamic balance between order and innovation. The chamber's crystals resonated with harmonious frequencies as the details of the new accord were displayed. The Meridian Empire would share its technology and knowledge freely, while Earth would teach its methods of innovation and adaptation. Together, they would create training programs, research initiatives, and cultural exchanges. But perhaps most importantly, Jason Park added, we're establishing the galaxy's first innovation centers, places where any species can come to learn, to experiment, to grow. Where order and chaos can dance together to create something new. As the assembly moved to ratify the historic agreements, Admiral Torres turned to DYX-001. You know, on Earth we have an old saying, the only constant is change. Indeed, the Supreme Archon replied, their crystalline form shifting in what had become recognizable as amusement. Though I prefer one of your other sayings, life breaks free. Life expands to new territories. Life finds a way. The chamber's crystals pulsed with new patterns as the accords were signed. Outside, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging the beginning of a new era. The age of rigid protocols was over. The age of dynamic evolution had begun. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, other civilizations watched and wondered about this strange new force that had emerged, not just humanity, not just the transformed Meridian Empire, but the powerful synthesis they had created together. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly the point. The future was no longer a fixed pattern to be followed, but a canvas of infinite possibilities to be explored. And in the dance between order and chaos, between wisdom and innovation, between the crystal and the storm, a new kind of civilization had been born. The end was just the beginning.